We're delving into a topic today that combines international supply networks, politics, and the fundamental things that keep the roadways in America running. The American auto industry, which was once hailed as experiencing a renaissance, is currently in a state of crisis. Hyundai. Policy whiplash has befallen the South Korean superpower that turned Georgia and Alabama into automotive powerhouses. Political unrest, tariff barriers, and immigration raids have left once thriving businesses on the verge of collapse. Localities are suffering. Investors are cautious. And the more significant query still, is America alienating its own automakers? It struggled to draw in how Hyundai turned into America's risk and promise. How Hyundai turned into America's risk and promise. At one point, Hyundai's entry into the American South was celebrated as a victory of international cooperation. The benefits of Georgia and Alabama's tax concessions and infrastructure improvements to entice the automaker were substantial. In addition to tens of thousands of jobs driving local growth, plants buzzed with SUVs, sedans, and finally EVs. Whole towns prospered as Hyundai's presence boosted the housing, restaurant, and supplier businesses. However, weaknesses were present behind the success. In the very globalized world of modern vehicle manufacturing, Hyundai's U.S. business has continued to rely on imported batteries, wiring, harnesses, and Korean experts' knowledge, which is essential for the production of EV batteries. Because of this reliance, the business was vulnerable to changing geopolitical trends, immigration restrictions, and tariffs. Consumer confidence, which was based on reasonable prices and extensive guarantees, also turned out to be brittle. Hyundai's price advantage was swiftly undermined by rising costs brought on by tariffs or interrupted supply chains. Globalization itself is essentially reflected in Hyundai's American story, which is celebrated while politicians are stable, but unstable when policies become punitive. And the startling raid brought such weaknesses into stark relief. Hyundai's momentum was halted by that. 2. The engine was stalled by the raid. The engine was stalled by the raid. The United States conducted its largest immigration raid at a single location on September 4, 2025, at the Hyundai and LG battery plant in LaBelle, Georgia. A multi-billion-dollar project that was supposed to be the cornerstone of Hyundai's U.S. electric vehicle future was put on hold overnight when federal authorities arrested 475 workers, many of whom were South Korean specialists necessary for final assembly. The disturbance happened instantly. Timelines for commissioning fell apart. Contractors ceased operations, and suppliers halted supplies. Battery calibration was disrupted by the loss of key personnel, leaving a state-of-the-art facility silent. Years-long schedules fell apart in a matter of days. The blow to politics was perhaps more profound. Noting that several of the detainees had legitimate visas, Seoul denounced the raid. Additionally, at least one legally documented employee was abducted, according to a leaked memo, supporting accusations of overreach. Americans' dependability as an investment partner started to be questioned by South Koreans. Investors in Europe and Asia were alarmed. If Washington was willing to risk $12, which project worth $6 billion overnight was safe? Families, restaurants, and suppliers all felt the financial pinch locally. The raid demonstrated how policy weakens industrial ambition. Whiplash. Please take a moment to hit subscribe and ring the bell before we go into trade wars and tariffs. In this manner, you'll be informed about every development in the automotive industry right here at Piston Pundit. Let's move directly on to the following challenge. Trade policy and tariffs affect Hyundai. The war on imports, policy changes, and tariffs. The war on imports, policy changes, and tariffs. Under Trump's America First framework, U.S. trade policy had already put pressure on Hyundai before to the raid. While Japanese competitors like Toyota and Honda were subject to a 15% levy, Korean automakers were subject to a 25% tariff on cars and parts. Hyundai and Kia lost their competitive edge as a result of the disparity. Hyundai's earnings have dropped more than 20% by the middle of 2025. Popular models' price increases from $3,000 to $6,000 destroyed the brand's reputation for affordability. Dealers saw their loyalties fade, fleet purchasers left, and showrooms were silent. Hyundai reduced its profit margins from 8% to 6% in order to bear some of the burden. In the long run, it promised that by 2030, American-made automobiles would account for 80% of U.S. sales, with Georgia serving as the anchor for an annual increase to 500,000 units. However, localization is not infallible. Imported subcomponents are still subject to tariffs, and significant U.S. investment could backfire if policies change. Meanwhile, there are less reasonably priced options for consumers. Paradoxically, a law designed to safeguard U.S. While undermining one of the biggest foreign investors in the South, industry has increased expenses for families. Furthermore, the ramifications of the automakers' difficulties extend well beyond corporate boardrooms. They attack the local immediately. Bleeding lines, community-wide economic repercussions. Communities, bleeding lines, community-wide economic repercussions. Hyundai's problems extend well beyond its financial statements. The carmaker was more than simply a business in Georgia and Alabama. It was a driving force behind the economy. Nearby restaurants prospered from the suppliers, schools and traffic ready, students pursuing professions in manufacturing. That environment started to deteriorate when raids occurred and tariffs tightened. Dealerships initially felt. Automobiles remained unsold. Sales teams found it difficult to defend increased prices when financing expenses skyrocketed. While suppliers that invested in Hyundai tooling faced unpaid invoices or reduced orders, workers prepared for layoffs or reduced hours. As plant activity decreased, tables in restaurants and small businesses in communities like LaBelle and Montgomery were empty. Payroll and sales tax income were lost by local governments, while universities that teach EV technicians wondered if those positions would ever become available. The psychological blow was the most severe. Once certain that foreign manufacturers provided stability, communities now questioned how long they would last. The question then became whether Hyundai will give in to pressure or strike back with a counterattack. Hyundai's counterattack: retrench, restructure, or reimagine. Hyundai's counterattack: retrench, restructure, or reimagine. Hyundai is not backing down in the face of adversity. It committed to a $2.7 billion expansion at its Georgia plant in September 2025, increasing capacity by 200,000 units, and setting a 3-year goal of 500,000 autos annually. The gesture conveys a resolve to persevere instead of give up. In order to hire qualified foreign experts who are essential to battery and gigafactory operations, Hyundai is also advocating for immigration reforms and a visa track. Executives caution that without them, American facilities will continue to be susceptible to disruptions. Regarding the product, Hyundai is taking precautions. Although EVs are still the most popular, hybrids and long-range electric vehicles offer a compromise for buyers who are concerned about high prices or range anxiety. Its U.S. lineup also includes the much-anticipated mid-size truck. Exert financial pressure. Hyundai reduced its profit margins, but it hopes to bounce back by 2027 by diversifying its suppliers and automating more processes. The global target of 60% electric vehicles by 2030 is still ambitious. However, daring tactics are only effective if they can pass the ultimate test. America's evolving policies and unstable politics last turn. Is Hyundai holding firmly or moving away? Last turn. Is Hyundai holding firmly or moving away? Hyundai is at a turning point. When policy whiplash takes over, foreign investment can become extremely fragile, as demonstrated by the Georgia trade. Once thought to be impregnable, a firm has been encircled by tariffs, labor shocks, and diplomatic rifts. However, rather than going out of business, Hyundai is retooling its product playbook, increasing production, fighting for reforms, and doubling down. Hyundai is placing billions of dollars on America, according to the real verdict. But it's not just factories and vehicles that determine whether that bet pays off. Whether Washington wants to retain its foreign partners in the race or drive them off the track depends on politics, policies, and other factors. It's your turn now. Is Hyundai's growth a desperate gamble or a daring masterstroke, in your opinion? Should the protection of American automakers be the top priority of U.S. policy, even at the expense of alienating foreign investors? And above all, if tariffs continue to drive up prices, will you still pick Hyundai? Please leave a remark below with your ideas and experiences. It is a pleasure to hear from you. Before you leave, click the subscribe button to follow the channel for the most recent information, analysis, and car news. I appreciate you viewing, and I hope to see you again soon.